Instagram. Let's go to Twitter. Okay. All right. I think I'm good. So, yeah, it's been a crazy morning, people. I apologize. I know this was supposed to be like an hour ago, and gosh, it's just the world is a crazy place right now. Um, so I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of time to talk out the whole parking lot, and it's very likely that not very many people are tuned in because, of course, you were expecting it to be at 1:30 or whatever. All right. I also don't need to hear myself from 10 minutes ago. So I'm looking at the chat. I'm not seeing anybody saying anything, so or in there. So I'm just gonna do this real quick once, which I already explained to everybody. So the question that seems to be really key, right, is how do you know when a PBI is basically when's a PBI done? I have a lot of thoughts about that. I think that it starts with, are we all speaking the same language? Because one of the things about Scrum specifically, and agility generally, is it's primarily, a set of guidelines based on a set of values. It's pretty subjective. I know there's been a lot of argument in the community lately, like mathematics hasn't changed, so why should Scrum change? Well, that's a false analogy, right? Mathematics, and this is just my opinion, and I'll admit it, and I've mentioned this before, I'm sort of a half-hearted mathematical Platonist, right? So I believe that math describes something that's objectively real, right? A circle is a thing that exists. The word circle is our description of it, and the mathematical things around that are our descriptions of what's true about it. But mathematics is an objective thing. Physics, I heard somebody else say, well, physics hasn't changed. And no, but our understanding of it has. But that's describing something that's objectively real, and it doesn't care what we think. Scrum, on the other hand, is a set of values and principles and things that we agree to do. And it's very subjective. I think there's a handful of, a very small handful of rules that if you're going to say you're doing Scrum, you should probably follow those rules, right? I tell people all the time, if you're just bolting Scrum on top of the waterfall, you're probably not actually doing Scrum, and you shouldn't call it Scrum because it's just going to be confusing. But beyond that, it's pretty limited. So what's a product backlog item? Well, it's an item in a list, right? That I think it's pretty hard to argue against that. If you read the guide, if you spend any time on it, you've got this list. It's called the product backlog. A product backlog item is a thing on the list, right? I mean, that's just sort of axiomatic. By definition of what the word list means, the things on it are called items. Now, what's special about a product backlog? The kinds of things that are on that list. This is where I think we can start to disagree, and reasonable people can. And like I tell everybody in my workshops all the time, you don't have to take my word for anything. I mean, you don't know me from Adam. Plus, I'm a little weird, and I wear weird T-shirts, and I'm not for everybody. And I have people that I respect and love with my whole heart and mind, and I think they're wrong about almost everything. But that's okay, right? We're allowed to agree to disagree. And I think one of the problems that we see in the world generally and in the Agile community and with Scrum specifically is anybody who says, this is the right answer and there is no other right answer. This is the way and there is no other way. That's why, by the way, I launched a side project, sort of soft side project this morning called Middle Path Agility. And I'll put it down in the comments section or whatever for this YouTube video. and probably announce it. I've announced it on social media, and I'll announce it a bit more. It doesn't really matter what that is, but check it out, middlepathagility.org. It's unrelated to my business, the company Fearless Agility. It doesn't represent the thoughts, feelings, and ideas of anybody besides me, including other people that help me run my company, maybe, and certainly the Scrum Alliance and anyone else, right? But anyway, back to the point. So once you get beyond just the basic first principle definitions, a PBI is an item on a list. That's where things start to get dicey and hazy, and reasonable people can disagree. And I'm a do what works kind of person. I don't think the Scrum Guide is a a rule book. So what do I think? Not that it's especially important, but people do ask me, so I'm willing to give my opinion of it. If a PBI is an item on a list, then we have to agree as a team, as a Scrum team or an organization, what kind of things are on that list. If we treat Scrum as a very sort of mechanistic, work-focused approach to things, and PBIs are units of work, and this is something I kind of probably preach a little bit too much against in my workshop, but if you think it's a chunk of work, then being complete is going to mean something different than if you treat it the way I treat it and the way I coach people to treat it and the way I've found it useful to treat it, which is it's a placeholder. A product backlog item is a placeholder for a bunch of conversations we're going to have later, right? And all of that is centered around somebody needs something. Whatever we make, if we're doing Scrum to make it, that probably means that we make things for people, and people are unreliable, so we have to, in terms of what they think and feel, and so we have to sort of agree to do things in a different way. And so we have this list of, here's these things that somebody has said that they need, a problem that they need solved. Now, and I say this in my workshop all the time. I've done Scrum in a lot of different industries and environments, not just the tech sector, definitely not just software. And so it's a different conversation depending where you are most of the time. But I will tell you, if you're in technology, and I don't want to break anybody's heart here, but if you're in technology, pretty much everybody else that you make stuff for hates it. Regular people hate technology, especially business people who aren't involved in making technology, right? They view it as a pain usually. It's my experience. I mean, maybe your experience is different. But what they want is not technology. What they want is a solution to some real problem that they experience when they do their work, all right? Whatever that work is, right? And we use technology to try and solve that problem. So what I'd rather see on the product backlog in the list, the kinds of items that I'd like to see on the list are just a very simple, maybe a couple of words or at most a sentence sort of description of what they say that problem is, right? I'm an underwriter in an insurance company and I want a way to figure out what the overnight risk rates change to. You could do that without technology at all. So the PBI itself doesn't imply anything. It's just, this is something that some real person needs. And I know not everybody agrees with me on that, and that's okay, right? But if that's what we agree to, then that totally changes the question of, well, what does it mean for that to be done? I mean, ultimately, it's done when we all agree that it solves the problem, including the person who asked for it. Now, is that going to happen by the end of the sprint? Maybe it will. If they're crisp and narrowly focused and we're reasonable and we set expectations, it's probable. But maybe it won't. But that's okay, right? Because it's just a placeholder on a list. We place too much importance on these things. Then we add a bunch of weird stuff like velocity and burn downs and a bunch of other stuff that I personally don't have time for. I know a lot of people do. But so what I coach and teach people, and what I say is that a PBI is just a placeholder. And what's the real question that we're trying to answer? How do we know if we've done what we set out to do at the beginning of the sprint? That's a different question than getting a certain amount or kind of work done. I say it's done if one of two things have happened. If we've provided a solution to the problem that satisfies the needs of the person that asked for it, and if not, that we've learned something that we couldn't have learned in any other way. That to me is what it means for a PBI to be complete. Now, I tell people in my workshops all the time, a complete PBI doesn't mean a finished feature, which is the way it's treated. I think that's a very mechanistic way of thinking about it. The reality is Scrum doesn't tell us how to do anything, right? It just tells us some principles. It says for some problems, we need to be empirical. And what does that mean? It means we can't figure it out on paper. So let's start experimenting and find our way there. But that's just what I think. And I'd love to see, and again, I'm sorry I was late for this today's episode of this. There's just been some craziness going on. And the soft launch of middlepathagility.org was an issue, and just some other things. But that's sort of where I stand on it. And I hope that that's, helpful. Let me know in the comments. This is going to post as a video, so, anybody that wants to say anything, you can say it, after you've watched this. Plus, if you do it that way, then you can fast forward, which, I have a tendency to ramble. And I've noticed especially, it's really hard in this new world where even when you can see people, right, on your Zoom screen and everything, it's still hard to feel, connected and get the feedback that you need. So I'm going to do another episode of Fearless Agility TV next week. I'm going to do my very best to have it be on time as scheduled and a little bit longer notice, and hopefully we'll get some people involved. In the meantime, be fearless, happy scrumming. I have a few spots left in my workshop that starts tomorrow, and we're going to, because of the way the world works now, we're going to accept anybody who, up until about maybe 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern, or 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. We'll put a link to where you can register. We're offering $150 off. So maybe I'll see you there. If not, maybe I'll see you next week. If not, I'll see you out in the social media sphere. And let's just have conversations. And let's try to do it without arguing. Let's try to do it without thinking, my way is right, your way is wrong. There's no conversation can happen then. So, peace, everybody.